Hey everybody,
Hello.
we have got something very important to talk about today. That's Jesus' sermon, the one that in Matthew is called the Sermon on the Mount. In Luke it's called the Sermon on the Plain. And it's got some really important central teachings. If you really want to understand Jesus, you need to know this sermon. So let's get going. Okay, so last time we were looking at the conflict between Jesus and the Pharisees over what the Bible says can and cannot be done on the Sabbath. And this we saw happening in many different places, in the synagogue, even out walking through the fields. Jesus would get confronted by the Pharisees. We also talked about his selection of the apostles. But now we're going to move on and talk about perhaps the most important sermon of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, it's called in Matthew, the Sermon on the Plain, as it's called in Luke. So let's do that. Luke 6:17. Karen, would you read that for us?
And having descended with them, he stood on a level place. Also a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of the people from all of Judea and Jerusalem and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon.
So they're coming from quite a ways away. Tyre and Sidon were big cities, pagan cities down along the Mediterranean coast. And people were coming all the way up from Judea. So he's got a big crowd following him now. He's got a lot of attention all across the areas where Jewish people were living. So what's our question?
Where was this level place?
Yeah, where was this level place that he gave the sermon? Well, here we're looking at a picture of the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee, and the arrow is pointing to the traditional location of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. The arrow is pointing to where Jesus would have been, and the people ranged up above him just a little bit higher on the mountain makes sort of a natural amphitheater there. But Luke doesn't say on the mount. Luke says in the level place on a plain. Well, if you look carefully there, you can see where the arrow is pointing. It is kind of a level place up on the mountain. So it's possible that both of these are referring to the same sermon, just using different way of describing it. You could call it up on a mountain or a level place. Then again, they could be two different sermons, so we don't know. Pastors often repeat their material, and as we'll hear, there's quite a bit in the version in Luke that's the same as Matthew, but there's also some that we don't see in Matthew. So whether it's the same sermon or not, we really don't know. But the point is that it gives us very important insight into Jesus' teaching. Okay, let's continue.
Who came to hear him and to be healed from their diseases. And those who were troubled by unclean spirits were being healed.
So he started out by healing people, which was something that he was doing like all the time, constantly spending hours doing this. Here we can see another view of the mountain there. The Mount of Beatitudes is that first hill rising up on the right side. Okay, continue.
And the whole crowd was trying to touch him, for power was coming out of him and healing them all.
Okay, well, how does it say they were being healed?
Power was coming out of Jesus.
By his touch or theirs?
It looks like they were touching him and the power was coming out of him.
Right, they were touching him and the power was coming out. That's quite interesting. And how many does it say got healed?
It says all.
Right, they were all being healed. Jesus had just this amazing ability compared to any healer ever before or since. He's healing everybody that came to him for healing. Okay, next one.
And he, having lifted up his eyes to his disciples, was saying, Fortunate are the poor, for the kingdom of God is yours.
Well, that's an interesting way to start a sermon. Why would he say fortunate to be poor? I don't think most people look at it that way. Why would it be fortunate to be poor?
Maybe their eyes are more on where their help is coming from.
Well, the way he describes it is he says the kingdom of God is yours. It's for you. Well, what does that imply? What he's saying right here is that the world looks at being poor as a disability, and God looks at it as the opposite, as something good, something that puts you in a position where you are more likely to inherit the kingdom of God. As with so many of Jesus' teachings, he's just turning the views of the world that so many of us have just without even thinking about it. He's turning it upside down, saying, no, the way you're looking at the world is not right. There's a completely different way that God looks at the world. Let's continue in the next verse.
Fortunate are those who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Fortunate are those who weep now, for you will laugh.
Well, why is it fortunate to be hungry?
Right. He says that you're going to be filled. You're not going to be hungry forever.
Right, again, he's turning things upside down. If you're hungry, you are going to be filled eventually. If you're weeping now, you're going to laugh. Well, when are you going to be filled and when are you going to laugh?
Later, maybe?
Right, later. Well, his whole teaching is in the context of the kingdom of God, and that God is going to reestablish his kingdom over the earth in a very direct and powerful way. And there is coming a day when everything's going to be turned right side up again, because from God's point of view, the world is upside down right now, and he's going to fix it. And all these injustices and these things that are wrong with the world, he is going to fix. You know, I should just say a word here about the translation that we're using. Many people are used to seeing here, blessed are those who are hungry. That's an okay translation, but the problem is that we have actually two completely different meanings for this word blessed. The main meaning is I bless you, like God blesses you. He says a blessing over you. Or I bless the Lord. Blessed are you, Lord my God. Saying a blessing over somebody. That is one word in the Hebrew and Greek. The word that's used here is a different word. So it's not talking about blessing somebody in that way. It's talking about being in a really good position. Having, another way to translate it is happy. Happy are those who hunger now. So this is why we're using this word fortunate, to reflect that there's a difference here in the original Greek of the Gospels. Okay, let's continue. Next one.
Fortunate are you when men hate you, and when they exclude you, and insult you, and denounce your name as evil for the sake of the Son of Man.
Wow, why would he be talking this way at this point in his ministry?
He is already being hated, and he's being excluded and insulted, and his
Right.
name's being denounced.
Right. In other words, this is something that he's already experiencing, and I'm sure it was pretty intense already at this point in his ministry. They were already plotting all kinds of things against him. So this is why it comes up at this point in his ministry. Next verse.
Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for look, your reward is great in heaven, for this is how their fathers used to act towards the prophets.
Wow, he tells us to rejoice. Is that how you act when you're scorned and insulted for being a Christian?
Not yet.
Well, that's how we're supposed to act, right? I mean, the normal thing is to just feel despondent, you feel terrible, and people are saying bad things about you. Jesus said, no, that is completely the wrong attitude. When people are attacking you because you are being obedient to Jesus, you should rejoice. Why? Because that means it's a sign that you're doing the right thing, because that's exactly how they responded to the prophets. That's exactly how they responded to Jesus. So we should not look at it as something bad. We should look at it as something good. He's trying to flip our thinking again from upside down from God's point of view to right side up from God's point of view. Next verse.
But woe to you who are rich, for you are receiving your comfort now.
Why? Why would it be a problem to receive your comfort now?
I want my best life later.
Right. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this expression going around, famous book going around, your best life now. But if you have your best life now, what does that mean about the future? That doesn't sound really good to me. I'd rather have my best life in eternity. Actually, that's what he's pointing at. If you got your best life now, that doesn't say anything good about what's coming in the future. Next verse.
Woe to you, those who are full now, for you will hunger. Woe those laughing now, for you will mourn and weep.
Okay, so again, God is going to flip things right side up. And when's that going to happen? When will they hunger and mourn and weep?
Later, they could be some of the ones that don't quite make it into the kingdom.
Yeah, so this is the opposite side of the spectrum here. He already talked about those who are poor and suffering. What about those who are doing just great now? It doesn't sound like a good perspective for the future. Verse 26.
Woe when everyone speaks well of you, for this is how their fathers used to act toward the false prophets.
The false prophets, everybody said, yay, go, go, yeah, we love to hear what you're saying. The true prophets, when they spoke, it made people upset. They didn't want to hear what they were saying. So Jesus said, it's not a good thing if everybody says that what you're doing is great, because when you say the things that are authentic from God, people don't like it. So that means we also need to change our attitude towards the things that we hear. There's so many false prophets running around saying all kinds of things that make us feel good, but that isn't the sign of a true prophet. A true prophet brings the word of God that brings conviction to your soul that you're not right and that you need to change. And so we need to change our attitude towards the things that we hear going on around us as well. Next verse.
But rather I say to you, the ones who are hearing, love your enemies, do good to those hating you.
This is not the normal attitude that we have towards enemies. We usually have a very strong negative reaction to our enemies. But he's saying that we should do the opposite. Again, he's flipping the world right side up. And the question?
Who are the ones who are hearing?
Yeah, he says, I say to you, the ones who are hearing. Who are those people?
It would be the people that were sitting on the plane with him. And it's also us who are hearing today when we're reading his word.
Those who have ears to hear is an expression that's used elsewhere. People hear the words, but that doesn't mean they get it. It doesn't mean it's going into their heart. So he's saying you to hear. He's looking for those people who have ears to hear, the ones who are listening, who are connecting with him. It's going into their hearts and their understanding. But what is he talking about when he says we got to love our enemies? What kind of love is he talking about there? Do we supposed to feel emotionally wonderful about our enemies?
Let's check the Greek on that.
Well, of course not. The meaning of the word here, which is agapao, it means that you're supposed to show love. Do acts of kindness and mercy towards somebody. And that's what Jesus is asking us to do. He's not asking us to have wonderful, good, warm, and fuzzy feelings towards our enemies. No, he's saying that even though that person is your enemy, even though they have done bad things to you, you are not supposed to act the same way. You're supposed to act the opposite way. They did evil to you, you do good to them. We are supposed to show the world the opposite of the way the world works. And so that's why we do good to our enemies. That's the kind of love we show, the actions that we take towards those people. Okay, good. Let's continue.
Bless those cursing you. Pray for those mistreating you.
Okay, here's that same thing. We're to do the opposite of what the world does to us. The world curses us, the world hates us, mistreats us, but we're not supposed to act that way. We're supposed to act differently. What do you think? Can you do that, Karen?
I can try.
It's not always easy. In fact, sometimes it's really, really difficult. But this is what Jesus is calling us to do, to turn the world right side up, to be different than the world, to go against the world, because we have our eyes focused on eternity. Okay, the next verse.
To the one striking you on the cheek, offer the other cheek, too. And from the one taking away your cloak, don't keep your tunic either.
Well, when do you think this would be happening, that somebody would strike you on your cheek? What would be the life situation for this?
They feel like you insulted them or something.
Right. This is not, somebody trying to kill you. This is an insult situation. Even today, like if a woman gets upset at a man for doing something, might slap him on the cheek or something like that. In those days, you said something insulting, they would slap you on the cheek. So this is not in a situation of war, right? It's just talking about this kind of interpersonal interaction. And you're supposed to turn the other cheek. And what about that cloak thing? When would somebody take your cloak? What would be the life situation for that at the time?
Would that be like a suing situation or
Yeah, a
something like
lawsuit.
that?
The Bible talks about somebody taking away a cloak in terms of a debt. So it has to do with legal matters. And so he says if somebody's trying to take away your cloak, don't keep your tunic either. Let them have that too. So let's understand this. Which one was more valuable, the cloak or the tunic?
The tunic, because it's covering your body?
Actually, the tunic would be a lighter material, probably cheaper. The cloak is a heavier, thicker material like outside. That would probably be the more valuable one. Why would you let him have the tunic too? Well, he's just saying, give him the cloak, let him take the tunic, let him take everything. Don't worry about it. You're trusting God. You're not trusting in the things that you have. And so when somebody does this, just let it go. Let him have it. Okay, let's continue.
To everyone asking you, give. And from the one taking away your things, don't ask for them back.
Okay, so first talking about somebody asking you. So, maybe they're asking you for money or a loan or something like that. And he says to give. So how much should you give them if they ask you something like that? What do you think, Karen?
I think you can decide how much you want to give.
Yeah, he doesn't say you have to give them everything that they want, because obviously we can't do that. We can't individually meet everybody's needs all the time. But he is telling us to do something. For people who come to you with a need, do something to help them. You might not be able to meet the entire need, but at least you can do something to help them along the way. And if enough people help, it's going to work out okay. But what about this second thing, the one taking away your things? That doesn't sound like you've agreed for that to happen, right?
So it's not like borrowing?
No, if they're taking your things, it sounds like they're stealing them. He says don't ask for them back. Don't even try to get them back. Just let it go. Wow, again, that's that attitude of not being worried about the things of this world, because God is going to take care of you. So don't get into a scrape with people over things that are really ultimately not important. What do you think? Can you do that, Karen? Well, you really have to think about it, and you have to retrain your mind. That's the whole point of reading the Bible over and over again, is to get your mind to switch over to God's point of view instead of the point of view that we normally have just from our everyday experience and from the cultures that we live in. And when we do that, we're eventually going to get our minds operating the way God wants us to. And don't worry, he's going to take care of us. Okay, next verse.
And just as you want people to do for you, do the same for them.
Most of us get upset at the way people treat us, or they did this or they didn't do that. And Jesus said, instead of worrying about that, why don't you think, okay, if that's what I want people to do for me, let me treat them the way I want to be treated. That will certainly put you, that's a shifting of gears. That helps you to approach life a different way when you're doing already to others what you would like to have them do to you. So what do you want people to do for you, Karen?
Just be kind.
Right, well, of course, it depends on the situation. But in general, don't we all want people just to be nice and friendly and kind to us? And that's a good place to start. Okay, the next verse.
And if you love those loving you, what credit is that to you? For the sinners also love those who love them.
Do you love people who don't love you back?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's not easy though, is it? You have to really make a decision. You have to make a decision to love. And again, here, the love is not, oh, I'm going to have flowers and hearts in my eyes, No, it means that you're going to do good. You do kindness and mercy towards these people, even those who don't love you back. As he says, even the sinners love those who love them. So we're supposed to be different than the world. And that means we love everybody, not just those who are the ones that are easy to get along with. Okay, good. Next verse.
And if you do good to those doing good to you, what credit is that to you? The sinners also do the same.
Right. Here again, we're supposed to do good to everybody, not just those that we know we're going to get something back from. Okay, good. Next verse.
And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive it back, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, that they might receive the same amount back again.
Wow. And that's certainly a lot different than the way our financial systems work. Can you lend to people and not worry about getting it back? That's what he's asking us to do. Well, why does he say here at the end that they might receive the same amount back again? Why only the same amount? Nowadays, when you loan to somebody, usually it's there's some kind of interest attached, and you're going to get back actually more than what you loaned to them. But it was a little bit different back in those days, and actually up until recent times, fairly recent times, time of the Reformation, that people really took these verses seriously, like we see in Leviticus 25, verse 36. Do not take interest and additional charges on a loan, and you will fear your God that your brother will live with you. So what it means is that, you're forbidden to charge interest on a loan. And society tried to live that way for hundreds of years. In fact, in the Muslim community, they're still trying to do this. When they set up their banks, they set them up in a way that they're not charging interest on a loan. Now, one of the things that we see, since the time of the Reformation is the kind of thing we see in a stock market, where you're not loaning money to the company, you're actually becoming a part owner of the company. And then if the company does well, you do well. If the company loses, you lose. But it's not a loan. You're not paying interest on a loan. You actually are joining in a partial ownership of the company. So this is a way to avoid this problem of charging interest on a loan, which ends up hurting poor people and making them poorer than they were to begin with. So here's desperate people, and you're making them more desperate. And this is what the Bible is saying that we should not do. And Western society did it this way for many years, but of course, unfortunately, now it's not that way anymore. Okay, the next verse.
But love your enemies, and do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the highest, for he is kind to the ungrateful and evil.
Okay, so here again we see that same word in the Greek, agapao, to love our enemies, which again means how you treat them. You treat them with kindness and mercy. Doesn't mean you have to have an emotional attachment to them in the way we usually think of that word, but rather it should be a godly love, like a familial love toward them. Okay, well, what does it mean here? You will be sons of the highest if you do this. If you do good and lend, expecting nothing to return, if you have a kingdom attitude, which is completely different than the world, completely different than what we're used to, you're going to be sons of the highest. Who is the highest?
God Almighty.
Right, and this is just one of the many ways that the Jewish people would refer to God without saying his name, because his name was looked at as too holy to be used in any kind of an ordinary way. And so, of course, it just means you're going to be a son of God, because you're going to be acting like God does, because this is how God acts to the ungrateful and evil. He does good for them. And we should be doing good for people, even the bad people, because this is what we are called to do as sons of God, to show his attitude towards people. He loves people, even those who hate him and who hate us. Okay, next verse.
Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful.
Right, well, how can we be merciful? What does that really mean? How would you do that in your life?
Isn't it a kind of kindness?
Yeah, I mean, I encounter this all the time in my job as a teacher. You have to grade students, and God's calling us to be merciful. So that means, you're going to treat people with concern. You're going to do the best that you can for them. Of course, we also are supposed to be enforcing justice, so we have to do what's right. But in enforcing justice, we should be merciful, right? Not be so strict every time. Okay, next verse.
And do not judge, and you will certainly not be judged. And do not condemn, and you will certainly not be condemned. Pardon, and you will be pardoned.
Okay, we're here again. We are supposed to be different than the world. I mean, wow, just look at the world around us. People judging each other all the time, condemning each other all the time. They don't agree with you, they condemn you. This is really creates a very toxic environment, toxic cultural environment. But God is telling us here, Jesus is telling us we're supposed to do it differently. We're not supposed to judge other people. We're not supposed to condemn. Who is the judge? The Bible says that God is the judge. So how can we practically do this? How can we avoid judging people? Karen, you got any ideas?
Keep a good attitude toward others, even when they're doing things that you don't agree with.
Right, just because somebody is doing something differently than you would do it, or something odd, you don't judge them, because you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know their background. But we don't judge the person. Now, that's not saying we don't know what is right and wrong. We absolutely know what's right and wrong. And we know that some things have been already judged by God, not by me. I didn't determine what was sin. God determines what is sin. So some things are right and some things are wrong. But we don't judge the individuals because we don't know what's going on in their life. We try to help them, and we try to be a good testimony to them rather than just judging them and condemning them. Okay, next verse.
Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken, pouring over, will be given into the fold of your garment. For with the measure you use to measure, it will be measured back to you.
Okay, we hear this a lot. It's very popular to be used when somebody's collecting an offering in the church. But let's think about it realistically. What activity is this referring to in daily life for those days? Can you think of anything?
Well, it reminds me of when I was a child, and we wore dresses, and sometimes you needed to carry something, and you could hold the ends of your dress and carry the thing inside your dress.
Right, and this would be one way of measuring out grain, for example. Put it into the fold of your garment, hold it up, and you measure it, and then that's the way you would determine how much you're getting. You would measure the grain. So that's what it's referring to. It's referring to measuring grain, seems to be, most likely. And that's the image that's being used of this measurement, which of course is also meaning judgment. So the way that we are measuring others is the way we're going to be measured. If we are generous in looking at other people and avoiding judging them, that's the same way that it's going to be done to us. It doesn't say specifically who And will that other people be kinder to us? Maybe, but certainly God will be. And so this is what Jesus is calling us to do, to be careful how we judge other people. Next verse.
Now he also spoke a parable to them. Can a blind man lead a blind man? Won't they both fall into a pit?
Okay, so it sounds like we're going into a new topic here when he's talking about, well, basically leadership. So what do you think? Is this true? Can a blind man lead a blind man?
They might fall down or have some troubles along the road.
Yeah, it will be quite difficult, especially if they're in a place that they don't know very well. But I don't think he's just talking literally about blind people. I think he's got something else in mind here. I think he's talking about the people that we follow in general, right? So is it important, do you think, to know the ability of somebody that you're following that's leading you along?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely, right? It's really important. So I think we're in the context here of discipleship. And let's see if that's true. Let's continue with the next verse.
A disciple is not above a teacher, but anyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher.
Okay, so for sure now we're talking about discipleship. And he's talking about the relationship of a student and a teacher. So what do you think? Is a student better trained than his teacher?
I always hope so.
But why would he be a student then of this teacher if he's better trained, right?
Oh, he would be after he's been trained by his teacher.
Right, but the whole point of training is to learn from the teacher. So you study with somebody who's better trained than you. So the disciple is not above his teacher. But the outcome of the training, he's supposed to be trained fully to be like his teacher. So what does that mean in the context of Jesus and his disciples? What should the disciples of Jesus be like?
They should be like Jesus.
Should be like Jesus, right? If we're fully trained, we're going to have Jesus' attitude. We're going to have his way of thinking. We're going to act the way that he acts. That's the goal that he sets before us. Okay, good. Next verse.
But why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but the beam in your own eye you don't notice?
Well, he says a speck. Is a speck something very seriously wrong?
It's just a tiny little thing wrong.
Yeah, it's just a tiny little thing wrong. He's not talking about some major sin or some major problem. He's talking about some little thing, those little things we look at and irritate us about other people and make us upset. I don't know. Why do you think we're so quick to criticize other people?
We're not quite like our teacher yet.
Right. We're looking with we're only concerned about ourselves, right? And so we should be very careful about this. Well, when he's saying this, why do you see the speck in your brother's eye? What brothers do you think he's talking about?
Somebody that's close to you. Somebody that you're associated with.
Right. Well, remember, what's the topic we've been talking about?
Disciples.
Discipleship, right? So the immediate thing that you would think of here is your fellow disciple, right? And of course, this would apply to the Christian community. When you're looking at fellow Christians, don't get all bent out of shape about some little thing that you see in their life. Of course, if it's something major, that's a different story, but this is talking about just those little things that so easily irritate us from day to day. Okay, let's continue.
How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me take out the speck in your eye," when you don't notice the beam in your own eye? Hypocrite. First take out the beam from your eye, and then you will see clearly to take out the speck in your brother's eye.
Okay, so he's telling us not to act so quickly when we see some little problem in somebody else. Instead, what attitude should we have?
Kindness.
Here specifically, he says you're supposed to, instead of looking at what you see as a problem in that other person, turn it around and look at yourself. So your first reaction when you see something that bothers you in somebody else, immediately turn it around, because usually that thing is bothering you because of a weakness in your own self, and that you should correct that inner weakness first before you bother to approach somebody else about something that you think is a problem in their life. We should be self-examining, examining our hearts, recognizing that we are wrong. You know, it's so easy to just go around and criticize everybody else and think everybody else is wrong. But Jesus is saying that is not the correct approach. We are instead supposed to look at ourselves and realize that we are just as much of a problem, if not more, than other people. And that we're supposed to deal with that first before we even think about dealing with what's going on in somebody else's life. Of course, if we have it worked out in our life, okay, there might be an appropriate time or moment where we can mention something to somebody. But if we do it with having looked at ourselves first, we'll do it in a much more loving attitude, a much more caring way, that will be much easier for the other person to accept. But we have to do that work within ourselves first. Okay, let's continue.
For a good tree doesn't produce bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree produce good fruit.
Is that true?
I'm pretty sure that's true.
Right. I mean, if the tree is very healthy, it's going to produce healthy fruit. If there's something that's not going right with the tree, then of course that's when it has problems with its fruit. But obviously he's not talking about agriculture here. So what's the good tree that he's talking about?
A person's life.
Yeah, a person's life. We tend to look at somebody and look at these picky little things, but why don't you instead look at that person's life? Are they serving God? Are they doing stuff for the kingdom? Are they faithful? You know, look at the good side. Maybe there's a lot of good things going on in that person's life, and you're looking at some little tiny little imperfection that really doesn't matter. So we should be taking into account the person's whole life. They're a person, they're a human being, they're a valuable person. And of course, the same thing is true if somebody's off track and they're not serving God. Of course, there's going to be bad fruit coming out, and it's going to be pretty obvious. We're not going to have to look for tiny little specks here and there. It's going to be obvious that something is going wrong. Next verse.
For each tree is known by its own fruit. For people don't gather figs from thorn bushes, nor harvest grapes from briars.
So what is he telling us we should be looking at when we evaluate other people?
Look at their fruit.
Right. Look at what's being produced by their life. Are they doing good things? Are they involved in ministry? Are they helping people? Are they kind to people? Now, that's what we should be looking at when we look at people, not looking at some tiny little imperfection here or there. And then he compares it to what we know just looking at different trees. You don't gather a fig from a thorn bush. No, you can see the kind of tree it is, and you can see what you're going to expect to come out of that tree. You know, if we look at a new Christian, we're not going to expect them to be producing what we see out of a mature Christian. We have to be looking at the overall life of that person and be generous in our evaluation of other people. Okay, next verse.
The good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings out good, and the evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings out evil. For out of the fullness of the heart the mouth speaks.
So what determines whether our hearts are filled with good or evil? Because it says a good man out of his good treasure of his heart. So there's a treasure in the heart. The evil man, the treasure of his heart. What determines whether you got a good treasure or a bad treasure?
Maybe what we're putting in.
Right, well, that would certainly make sense. Your thinking is turned right side up with Jesus. You're doing things Jesus' way. You're working on putting good things into your life, the Word of God into your life. So you're building up a good treasure. And then if that's what you've built up, then of course, you're going to bring out of that good treasure good things. You're going to treat people the right way. You're going to act the right way. But of course, people who are constantly putting bad things into their heart, things of the world, evil thoughts, worldly attitudes, of course, when they speak, that's what's going to come out. So we have to really be careful what we put into that treasure deep within our hearts. Next verse.
But why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say?
Well, what's this talking about?
Calling him our Lord and Master, but not doing what he says, that kind of means that he's not really your Lord and Master very
Right, I mean,
well.
It's just so sad, but unfortunately we see a lot of this. People calling Jesus Lord and making a profession of faith, but yet they don't try to do what he says. And it sometimes happens in very obvious, dramatic ways. We're not talking here about small things. We're talking about their overall life, the fruit of their life. We don't see the fruit coming out because they're not doing things Jesus' way. So what's the point? I saw something recently on the internet where they were talking about progressive Christians whose doctrine is going so far away from the Bible. And they raised the question, why do they even call themselves Christians? You know, if you're not going to obey Jesus, why even bother to call yourself a Christian? Okay, next verse.
Everyone coming to me and hearing my words and doing them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house, who dug and went down deep and laid his foundation on the rock. Now when a flood came, the river burst against that house and was not able to shake it because it was well built.
So obviously he's not just talking about construction techniques. He's talking about our lives. How can we obey this? How can we build our houses on the rock?
On the foundation of Jesus.
Right, it's talking about your foundation. And what is the foundation that we should be building on? It's the rock of faith. In the Psalms, God my rock in whom I will trust. So God has to be the foundation. And if we build on that foundation, we're going to be strong when the storms of life come along. And the next verse?
But the one hearing and not doing is like a man building a house on the ground without a foundation, against which the river burst, and immediately it collapsed, and great was the ruin of that house.
Okay, so what about this one? How do you build your house without a foundation?
So you're not basing your life on the things of God.
On anything strong or dependable, right? You're not basing it on God, and so that means when the trouble comes, there's nothing going to support you. You're just going to wash away, and Jesus is trying to prevent that from happening in our lives. Okay, wow, so there's a lot to think about there as we look over Jesus' Sermon on the Plain and the Gospel of Luke. A lot of things where, wow, we need to correct ourselves. Even we've been Christians for many years. A lot to think about, a lot to work on in our own lives. And next time we're going to continue with Jesus and his ministry in Galilee. Hope we'll see you there. Bye-bye.
Bye.